So, when you think of IKEA, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Probably flat-pack furniture, right? Maybe those famous Swedish meatballs? But what if I told you they're getting into the energy business by tackling the enormous problem of food waste? Let's dive into how they're doing it.
Now, really, just picture it for a second. What if the scraps from your lunch, the stuff you just scrape into the bin without a second thought, what if that could actually be turned into clean energy for homes and businesses? Sounds a little like science fiction, doesn't it?
Well, surprise, it's not science fiction anymore, because that is the exact bet that the furniture giant IKEA is making right now, turning a problem every single restaurant deals with into a pretty incredible opportunity.
Okay, so how are they pulling this off? Well, they're not going it alone. IKEA US has kicked off a pilot program with a company called Vanguard Renewables. And these guys are specialists. Their whole deal is taking organic waste and converting it into something valuable. This partnership is kind of like their test kitchen for the idea.
So this isn't happening everywhere just yet. They're testing it out at 5 US stores. And you can see they've picked locations from the East Coast all the way to the Midwest, probably to see how the model works in different places. At these stores, they're collecting everything, from the trimmings in the kitchen during food prep all the way to the leftovers on customers' plates.
And get this, even though it's just a pilot program, the numbers are already huge. Over just 6 months, they're expecting to divert more than 32,000 pounds of food waste from landfills. That's more than 16 tons. It really shows that this thing can have a serious, measurable impact even right out of the gate.
All right, so that brings up the big question. How in the world do you turn a plate of meatballs into megawatts of power? Let's get into the nitty-gritty of the science that makes it all happen.
The secret sauce here is something called anaerobic digestion. It sounds super scientific, right? But it's actually a totally natural process. You basically take all that organic waste, stick it in a big, sealed tank with zero oxygen, and then you let a bunch of microorganisms go to town on it. They just eat it all up.
And this is where it all comes together in this really cool circular system. First, the waste is collected. Then it goes into the digester where the microbes do their thing. As they break it all down, they create a biogas. That gas gets cleaned up and becomes renewable natural gas that can go right into the energy grid. But wait, there's more. The solid stuff that's left over? That becomes a nutrient-rich, low-carbon fertilizer for farms. It's a perfect loop. Nothing goes to waste.
Now, this pilot program is cool and all, but it's not just some random one-off project. It actually fits into a much, much bigger picture for IKEA. This is all part of their massive corporate sustainability strategy. And when I say massive, I mean it. The company has set some seriously ambitious goals for itself, using 2016 as their starting point. They're aiming for zero organic food waste by 2030, which this program obviously helps with. But they also want to cut their entire supply chain emissions in half by then. And by 2050, a whopping 90% reduction. These are huge company-defining goals.
And this quote from the CEO of IKEA US really nails their whole philosophy. It's about a complete shift in mindset. Instead of looking at food scraps as a problem you have to get rid of, they see it as a valuable resource that's just waiting to be used.
But, setting big, ambitious goals is one thing. The real world has a funny way of throwing curveballs, and the path to becoming a super green company isn't always a straight line. IKEA has definitely had to face that reality too.
For example, take a look at their goals for home delivery vehicles. The original plan was to have 100% zero-emission deliveries by 2025. Super ambitious. They've since had to tweak that. The new goal is 90% by 2028. Now, that's still a huge commitment for sure, but it is a noticeable change from their original plan.
So, what happened? Why'd they change it? Well, IKEA pointed to a couple of major factors. First, the absolute explosion in online shopping totally changed the game for their delivery logistics. And second, the electric vehicle industry is still evolving, which can make it tricky to get the right kinds of vehicles for a delivery network as massive as theirs. It just goes to show that even giants like IKEA have to be flexible.
All right, but this food waste pilot isn't just about good intentions. To really understand what's going on here, you got to do what they always say. Follow the money. And that's where this story gets even more interesting.
So it turns out that Inga Group, which is IKEA's biggest retailer, hasn't just hired Vanguard Renewables, they've actually invested in them. They bought a minority stake. Now that completely changes the dynamic. They're not just a customer anymore, they're a financial stakeholder. They have skin in the game for this technology to succeed and scale up. And if you zoom out, this web of corporate players is pretty fascinating.
You've got Inca Group, the retailer, putting money into Vanguard, their partner. Vanguard itself was bought by the massive asset manager BlackRock back in 2022 and is now part of its Global Infrastructure Partners Group. When you see names like BlackRock getting involved, it tells you one thing. This is not a niche little green project anymore. This is big business.
And that kind of leaves us with a big final question to chew on. IKEA, like any big food seller, is part of a system that creates food waste. By investing directly in a company that offers a solution, they're doing more than just cleaning up their own act. They're building a business model around the fix. So is this just really smart business? Or is this maybe a new blueprint for what corporate responsibility looks like? Something to think about.